You're listening
to Real Mysteries, Episode 6.
Episode 6.
I'm Brenda Bennett. For this episode of RealMysteries.us, we all had notes and we were sitting around trying to plan how we would deliver all of the evidence and all of the material in front of us. And as we read through our notes, we got to talking and we decided to use that session. And here's that discussion. Hi, Ken. Hi, Rick.
Hi, Brenda.
Glad you're here.
What's up?
It's going to be one of those nights, is it? Okay. We're going to see if we can recap what we've covered in our previous episodes and take a look at both the evidence and the hearsay.
Add it all up and see what we get.
Yep. Sounds good. All right. There's a couple of books we've been using for background. Kent Freitas, his book. There's also another book, Simple Truths, that I think it was written by a couple of FBI agents as well as Bob Burke, who's a local author. There's so much detail in Simple Truths, photos and information presented about Oklahoma City that it's really good, and that's been a great resource for us.
It's been a big help.
Both books.
Yeah. Okay, so what have we got? But let's try to keep things in some kind of a logical order.
Well, let's see. There's the truck axle they found over near the bomb site that linked the truck's rental to Timothy McVeigh.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of witnesses reported seeing a yellow Ryder truck in front of the Murrah Federal Building just before the explosion, right?
Mm-hmm.
And the truck was rented in Junction City, Kansas. The people working there agreed on the description of the guy that rented it, and the FBI even came up with a composite drawing they referred to as John Doe number 1.
Yep, and they were certain that there was another guy with him when he picked up the truck at the rental place in Junction City, and that was the concept drawing of John Doe number 2.
Hold on, we're going to get back to John Doe number 2 in a minute. So the fake driver's license he used at the truck rental place had an expiration date of April 19th, and he showed a birth date of, you guessed it, April 19th as well.
Yeah.
What a coincidence.
Weird.
Mm-hmm.
Sounds intended or planned to me.
Yeah. And the FBI, they took those drawings around to local businesses near the Ryder truck rental place. And the owner-operator lady at the Dreamland Motel, is that the name of it?
Mm-hmm.
She recognized John Doe number 1 as having stayed there in the past week.
But she said he asked if it was okay to park a big Ryder truck at the motel while he was staying there.
And what I thought was so interesting, she said he seemed clean-cut, and he had a nicely pressed shirt on, but it didn't seem to fit that he was driving that old beat-up yellow Mercury.
And he was, I think he appeared to be alone when he registered as Tim McVeigh. And he listed the Mercury car, the tag number. Remember, he took the tag off when he drove it to Oklahoma City. And gave an address in Decker, Michigan. And that turned out to be the farmhouse of James Nichols, where he and his brother Terry had farmed the land.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Now, Decker police said that James and Terry Nichols were known to have expressed anti-government sentiment. Terry had been in the Army with McVeigh, and they became best friends.
Yeah, and then the FBI plugged that name, McVeigh, into their computers, and guess what? Lo and behold, there's a Timothy McVeigh currently being held at the jail in Perry, Oklahoma.
And that's about 80 miles north of Oklahoma City, and it was about 80 minutes after the bombing. And we heard from Trooper Charlie Hanger, and he's now a sheriff, but he stopped him on I-35 for driving with no license plate. But McVeigh had no insurance or proof of ownership. That was weird.
Didn't seem very prepared for a getaway.
Yeah, anybody remember what he had on him?
Oh, well, sure. He had a loaded gun and then extra ammo and a big knife on his belt, and that's what got him arrested, was the weaponry.
And the T-shirt he was wearing, that anti-government propaganda in his car as well.
Yep.
Yeah.
And then there's that little pesky business card that he left in the seat of the patrol car for Paulson's military supply, and it had a note on the back.
Yeah. TNT.
Was that in his handwriting, Rick? That TNT, $5 per stick, need more?
Yeah.
Was it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And when you compared the handwriting on the truck, or the truck rental agreement, rather, in the Dreamland Motel registration form, all the receipts, the windshield, please do not tow, no, they left in Oklahoma
Right.
City. Everybody remember that? The anti-government writing found in the truck and his old beat-up Mercury. It's pretty obvious it was all McVeigh's handwriting because it all matched. Everything slanted to the left.
So, okay, the FBI agents were helicoptered up there to Perry, Oklahoma, and they get there and they asked McVeigh why he thought they were there to ask him questions. And I remember he said, it's probably about that Oklahoma City thing.
All right, so, guys, wait a minute. Is it just me, or does it seem like McVeigh and Nichols, with all this evidence they're leaving behind the whole way, either they were trying to get caught, they wanted to be sure and get the credit, or were they just plain stupid?
Yeah, it's a little kind of a Dumb and Dumber thing.
Exactly.
Really?
I mean, first, let's talk about McVeigh's car, that old beat-up 1977 yellow Mercury Marquis. Well, mostly yellow, except there's that big, dark, primer-colored left rear fender. In fact, Charlie Hanger said that's what drew his eye to the car as he was going by it.
Yeah.
And then it made him notice there wasn't a tag on it either. I don't understand that part. But now, if you were going to pick a getaway car to drive off in after committing the worst act of domestic terrorism, would a ratty-looking yellow car the size of a boat with no tag on it be your first choice?
No, it's dumb. But let's see. Talk about other dumb things. They stole dynamite, blasting caps.
Probably other stuff along the way, too. But they didn't think to steal a license plate or screws to keep it from falling off?
Really? Well, they only paid $250 for it up there at the Firestone store up in
So McVeigh was the brains, shall we say, if you want to call it that. And Nichols was his patsy, if you will.
Well, remember when we interviewed Kent Freitas, he referred to McVeigh as a morbidly fascinating person, and he called Nichols a whiner and a loser.
Yep. Still whining, by the way. And McVeigh seemed to be calculated and strategic. You know, he planted that business card in the back of the patrol card. He had the message on his T-shirt, things like that.
Whereas Nichols, he tried to hide all that extra fertilizer on his lawn. As a matter of fact, a lady visiting a neighbor saw him doing it. It was so much, she said it looked like it had snowed on his yard.
Yeah, on April 20th.
Right.
Well, but even McVeigh, with all his brains, did goofy things too. You mentioned the note on the getaway car windshield, and where he parked it, wasn't it behind the YMCA where he left his car? Now, if we were to ask an average police person what they would do if they saw a note like that, I don't think they would.
They may tag it, put one of those.
I don't think it'd
tags
stop
on.
them from having a car towed, at least if it was mine.
And Nichols got paranoid, right? He drove to the police station, turned himself in, and then he consented to his house being searched.
But I think the evidence that really linked these two guys together were the receipts and the fingerprints the FBI found when they searched Nichols' place in Harrington, Kansas.
Well, there's a receipt there for 2,000 pounds of ammonium nitrate fertilizer. That's a lot of fertilizer.
And then the blasting caps, 5 rolls of blasting caps. There's an instruction book for bomb making. And I think there were 14 total fingerprints from Terry Nichols.
Also, there was McVeigh's military backpack and his rifle.
Then there's the debit calling card. It was just like a coupon booklet in the name of Darrell Bridges. And it had the same address in Decker, Michigan. McVeigh used at the Dreamland Motel. And he used that address, too, when he was booked in the county jail in Perry.
I guess Darrell Bridges was just another made-up name.
Also, weren't there like 32 guns and weapons and some 55-gallon barrels?
Boy, talk about evidence. That's
Wow.
a lot of evidence.
Yeah.
There's also those tape recordings of McVeigh's anti-government rants furnished to the FBI by the former security guard who was a co-worker of McVeigh's.
Yeah, and I think there's some surveillance footage of him in Waco. We know he was in Waco in April 93, and he watched that fiasco, the Branch Davidian siege down there, and he sold bumper stickers and they had anti-government slogans and things like that. He was just there mainly to protest, I think.
So we know there was plenty of evidence to bring McVeigh and Nichols to trial at this point. But what about indications that other people may have been involved too?
Well, Terry Nichols' brother James was arrested too, but the FBI released him 32 days later because there was just not enough evidence to link him to the crime.
Yeah, and there's the Jordanian man from Oklahoma City, I believe, who had been detained for questioning. He was eventually released, and he even said in one report back during that time that he was going to attend the memorial service for the bombing victims, and I think he also filed a $1.9 million lawsuit against the federal government.
All right, so let's go ahead and jump to the nagging issue of John Doe number 2. Who was he?
Well, there were a lot of people that thought they saw another person with McVeigh, like when he rented the Ryder truck, and other people think they saw him downtown Oklahoma City.
Janet Reno released sketches of John Doe number 1. John Doe number 2, she had that big press conference, and we have composite drawings.
Well, that was just April 20th,
Right.
which was the day after the bombing, so that's pretty soon to release something like that.
And then the FBI received thousands of phone calls reporting sightings of McVeigh, Nichols, and the 2 individuals in those composite drawings.
Right, and my favorite law enforcement official, Bob Ricks, he talked about how there were a number of people who were very sincere, and they thought they'd seen both guys in downtown Oklahoma City, but logistically none of it matched up. It couldn't. It was impossible because the sightings were so scattered across the city that they each contradicted each other.
But he also said there were those who were just out for profit or attention or notoriety.
Right.
Well, yeah, because Attorney General Janet Reno announced that a reward of up to, I don't know, maybe $2 million had been offered for information leading to the arrest and conviction of whoever was responsible for the bombing. So that might tend to bring a few people out of the woodwork with some kind of information.
Yep.
We could play that there's a press conference that FBI Director Louis Freeh mentioned something about
let's
the reward.
play that.
Okay.
Do you know whether the reward was a factor at all in information that's been developed in the past 24 hours?
We've gotten 2,600 calls, many different leads. I don't think I could determine that for you right now accurately.
So eventually, more than 18,000 callers reported having seen someone who looked like those drawings, not just in Oklahoma, but also in Kansas, New York, Arizona, and many other states. But all were exhaustively followed up by the FBI, but not determined to be beneficial. Is that right?
Yep.
Am I correct?
Yep, no John Doe number 2 until late in May '95. The FBI really, as an example of how thorough those guys were, they went back to Elliott's body shop and asked for Ryder truck rental agreements from the days before the bombing. And then they interviewed each one. I mean, those guys are bloodhounds. They just don't give up. And so they found this young man named Michael Herdig, and he was an Army soldier who had rented a truck from Elliott's body shop on April 18th. Now, that's the day after McVeigh rented his truck. So this Herdig fella also looked somewhat like John Doe number 1. And he had a friend with him, who had brought him to the shop to pick up that truck and drop him off. And his name was Todd Bunting. And Todd had gone inside with Michael to the body shop. So the FBI agents located Todd Bunting, and he confirmed all those details, including what he was wearing, the jeans, a black T-shirt, that especially that Carolina Panthers ball cap he was
Right.
wearing.
Right.
And he also had a tattoo on his arm that had been described. So it was all there. And Todd agreed to put all those clothes on while the FBI was there and let him take a photo of him. And it's in, I think it's in the Simple Truths book.
Right.
So
Yeah. So it kind of matched up.
it did.
And that's why I've never believed there was a John Doe number 2, and this is proof that while he may have existed in the sketch, he really had nothing to do with the bomb.
Well, see, Tom Kessinger, who gave the description in the first place of John Doe number 2, when he was shown that photo of Todd Bunning, he agreed, yep, that's
That was
him,
the
I'm
guy.
sure of it.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, those guys came the day after McVeigh, so it was fresher on his mind, I think. And the FBI determined, Todd Bunning had no connection with the Oklahoma City bombing. And I don't know, for me, that explains John Doe number 2, where he came from. It's very logical.
But yet, still today, people will argue and say they still believe there was a John Doe number 2.
Yeah, and I don't think they'll ever be convinced
Right.
that there wasn't. And I respect that,
Yeah.
but at the same time, I think there's evidence.
Well, I mean,
points.
I'm sure there were other people that were influential with McVeigh and even Nichols thinking ahead of this
Well, in the book,
occurrence.
Turner Diaries.
Yeah. So, and the gun shows they went to, and the discontent with certain aspects of the government or the way things are done. But I think the point is that it's possible for just 2 people to do what they did. I mean, to steal those explosive devices and to, go buy fertilizer in large amounts and the racing fuel and, put it all together. And I mean, it was possible to be pulled off by just 2 people. That's pretty scary, but
So there you have it.
There you have it.
All right, so let's go ahead and get back to a new name that surfaced about this time in the investigations, and that's Michael Fortier.
Right.
Well, he's that guy from Kingman, Arizona, and the FBI got to him on April 21st, 2 days after the bombing, and he didn't want to cooperate. I can't imagine why.
Yeah,
Well-
why is that?
Yeah, that's probably because he's a little paranoid. He's a drug user, crystal meth, marijuana. So when the FBI searched his house, they found a bunch of stolen weapons and evidence of his drug use. And so he's really concerned the FBI were going to link him to McVeigh.
And his phone was wiretapped, too. No usable evidence from those wiretaps.
Yeah, I think he changed his mind when he got subpoenaed to appear before the federal grand jury that they called in Oklahoma City, and I think that's where the case turned.
Yeah. Fortier decided on a plea bargain. After all, he was married with a daughter.
Yeah, his wife Lori was involved somewhat. I mean, she was in on some of the discussions, and she laminated one of the fake driver's license that McVeigh used.
They were Army buddies, Fortier and McVeigh, I guess, and maybe Nichols, right?
Yeah, they were all in at the same time.
Yeah, and so I think McVeigh let Fortier, I think it was critical evidence in the trials that we haven't even discussed yet, but it was Fortier's testimony, I think, that they were buddies, and he told Fortier, he used to hang out with him. He'd go to Kingman, hang out, spend a week or 2. He told him he and Terry were thinking about blowing up a federal building.
Yeah, he provided information to investigators that hundreds of FBI agents across the U.S. investigated, and it checked out. So we haven't really addressed, though, the issue of why Oklahoma City, why our federal building in Oklahoma City?
Well, the Murrah building housed all kinds of federal agencies, and that's what McVeigh was targeting, because it had ATF, or Bureau of Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. What else?
Secret Service, Customs, Social Security Administration.
Had the Housing and Urban Development, the Veterans Affairs, and the Agriculture departments in there.
Yeah, I remember being down there years before getting Social Security cards for my little girls.
Yeah, that week, my wife was going to go get Social Security card for our daughter, who was born in '93, so we didn't have a Social Security card for her just yet. And she could have been in the building that morning.
Yeah. Well, those two friends of my mother's that we used her in episode 1. She shared about them.
Her
In fact, they
friends.
were the oldest people killed in the bombing, but they were there at 9 o'clock.
Always on time.
Yeah, sad.
And the design of that building, it was flat. It was right up on the street, glass. There's a little circle drive in front. And so it's perfect to drop somebody off and all that. And they don't make buildings. They don't make federal buildings like that. They don't build them right on the street. They build them offset, and you can still drop somebody off, but you have a ways to walk. So that building, for McVeigh's purposes and for the type of bomb he built, was perfect.
Wow. I'm worn out. That's a lot of information.
Yeah.
How are we going to possibly get this all into episode 6 and present it, Ken?
That's a good question.
I think we just did.
What do you mean?
I think we just did.
Oh, use what we just...
Yeah.
It's not a bad idea. It's
Summarize.
the first good idea you've had
Yeah.
all day,
Oh, thanks.
Rick.
Well, we'll see what we get.
Yeah.
It's easy to look back on all the evidence to see the trail left by McVeigh, Nichols, and Fortier. A couple of really good books to read are A Simple Truth, which we were talking about. It provides mountains of evidence. It was printed by the Oklahoma Heritage Association. And Oklahoma's Most Notorious Cases by lawyer Kent Freitas. It's published by Roadrunner Press. In upcoming episodes, we'll talk about the 3 trials. For now, I'm Brenda Bennett. And this is RealMysteries.us.
Real Mysteries is brought to you in part by Roadrunner Press. Join us for more on RealMysteries.us.